Hey everyone, welcome to AnTalk, the weekly comic conversation. Now, this is a part 2 video of my Luke Cage Season 1 review. If you haven't seen my part 1 video where I go over the first 6 episodes, go check that out, come back. But yeah, this is going to be my part 2 video where I go over episodes 7 through 13. I won't spoil anything episodes 7 through 13 right now, but I am going to spoil when I went over in my first video. So if you haven't seen through the first 7 episodes of Luke Cage, and if you have not seen my first video on part 1, episodes 1 through 6, go check that out, go watch Luke Cage, then come back and see this video. But I'm not going to spoil anything from the second half of the season right now. At the end of the video, I will go into spoilers and Easter eggs and what I thought on those. So overall, I've really enjoyed this first season, first and second half. I was very impressed with most of the performances in this show. With it being mostly an African American cast and set in today's Harlem, I love the feel and the tone of the show and the culture and the diversity it brings to the MCU and comic book movies and shows in general. Very fresh, very needed, but I did have some issues with the show after episode 7. If you watch my last video, you'll notice how much I loved Mahershala Ali's character, Cottonmouth. Well, in episode 7, spoilers, he dies. And at least in my opinion, the show changes quite a bit after that. And it's not necessarily just because he died. Remember, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, so I can deal with my favorite character dying. But I do feel they wasted the character of Cottonmouth. I thought he was well written, interesting, a great villain. And as we saw in episode 7 before he died, a little backstory, he was actually pretty complex. Plus, Ali just steals every scene he's in, and his talent surely will be missed. But I really feel like the show changed pace after that. The first 7 episodes and the last 6 episodes almost feel like 2 completely different seasons, if you ask me. Where the first half of the show introduced Luke Cage, Mariah Dillard, Cottonmouth, and Misty Knight, and saw how Luke Cage's relationship with Pop, and through Pop the community, how he ends up having to get involved and goes head to head with Cottonmouth. So after Cornell's death, we see how things start to change as a result. Enter Diamondback. We all know that Shades has been working with Cottonmouth under Diamondback's orders, and from what is apparent, Cottonmouth himself is under Diamondback to some degree. So now, Luke Cage has to deal with Diamondback the rest of the season as we learn about Diamondback's backstory and how he's connected to Luke Cage's past. At first, I thought it was a little jarring making such transitions between main villains. Yes, Diamondback is referenced a lot throughout the first half of the season. I know that we also start to watch Mariah Dillard's transformation throughout all this, but still. Diamondback is referenced quite a bit before he's introduced, but only by the villains, so there's no build-up of the connection between him and Luke Cage. So I think it feels weird if you haven't read any of the comics or the source material. It almost feels kind of random, like, wait, what? This guy knows Luke Cage? This Diamondback guy they've been talking about the whole season? Having said that, though, I did still enjoy it. It does get a little slow for me, or at least the situation gets dragged out a little long around episode 8 or 9. I honestly think this show probably could have been told in 12 episodes, maybe even 11. But that's not a huge complaint. I did enjoy almost every minute of this show, so I thought Rosario Dawson was a big plus this second half of the season. We've seen her in the other Netflix shows, and she's great in Daredevil, but I think Luke Cage is a good home for her. In my opinion, she's Marvel's strongest on-screen female other than Black Widow and Jessica Jones. After what I said about Diamondback, I do have to mention, though, the actor, Eric LaRae Harvey, did an incredible job. Like Ali as Cottonmouth, Harvey has a very commanding on-screen presence. Never really a dull moment when he's in the room. He is entertainingly insane, but I will say his motivations and why he has such a fire lit under his ass for Luke Cage is a little unrealistic, at least in my opinion. It just seems a little hard to buy that he would go through such extremes and all this throughout his whole life just for the reasons that he has for disliking Luke Cage. I thought the fight scenes in Luke Cage are pretty decent, pretty good. They do get a little redundant and kind of the same thing over and over with not much danger for them. And some of them, including the last fight, I feel like go on longer than realistically necessary for someone like Luke Cage's character. But like I've stated before, I've been waiting a long time to see Luke Cage in a live action role. So I do find the fight scenes pretty entertaining, and it's never really explained how Diamondback relates to the first half of the season with what's going on with Cottonmouth and stuff before he knows much about Luke Cage. Despite some of the small flaws this show may have, I gotta say I do really love this show. I really do love all these Marvel Netflix shows, but Luke Cage was just so fresh to me. I have to give a lot of credit and praise to the writers of this show. Most of the dialogue was good, some of it a little Hollywood cliche maybe, but other than that, I really gotta praise them for what they were able to do with this comic book property. With all the controversy, hate, and anger going on in the world today, with whitewashing being such a touchy subject in Hollywood right now, just how they took this story with an almost all African American cast, set in Harlem, with the culture, the diversity it brings, the music that it brings, I think is just incredible, really. And for something like this to transcend race and culture into something that was so popular and successful, it crashed Netflix when it came out. And how they incorporated issues going on in today's society like a criminal justice system, police, stereotypes, and how they put it in a world full of superheroes, sci-fi, and fantasy, and still made it seem relevant, real, and grounded. It's just incredible to me. And that's what I really love about this show. Despite some of the small flaws it may have, it is a good show, and I do believe, what it brings to the table pushes it over the top when it comes to greatness. So yeah, I was very impressed with Luke Cage, and I really liked it a lot. I urge you to check it out if you haven't already. But now I'm about to get into spoilers and Easter eggs and tell you what I thought about those. So spoilers from here on out if you have not finished Luke Cage Season 1. Okay, so spoilers. Let's start way back at the beginning. No, I don't mean episode 1. I mean way back at Luke Cage's beginning, when he was still Carl Lucas from Savannah, Georgia. So Carl Lucas, Luke Cage's birth name, was the son of a preacher from Georgia. So how Diamondback falls into place is his name is Willis Stryker, and he's the bastard son of Carl Lucas's father. Stryker knew this, but Carl Lucas didn't. They grew up best friends, but apparently Willis Stryker grew up resenting Carl Lucas this whole time because he was the favorite son. So this is what I meant when I said I thought his motivations were a little unbelievable or extreme, just because he wasn't the favorite son and his best friend Carl Lucas didn't even know they were brothers. If you know what I'm saying or see what I'm saying at all, please let me know in the comments below. So in the comics, they have a similar relationship where they grew up best friends, but they weren't secretly brothers. This is a new thing to the show, and Diamondback did set up Luke Cage to go to prison, but it's for different reasons. It's actually over romance. The romance in the comics is actually over Reva, who Carl Lucas meets while he's in prison. So when Carl Lucas is in prison, episode 4, I actually really enjoyed this episode. We do see his origin and how he became Luke Cage. And it is a little different, but it's still pretty close to the comics. He is chosen for an experiment. In the comics, it's actually to recreate the super soldier serum. A prison guard with a grudge on Carl Lucas does try to sabotage the whole procedure and kill Carl Lucas. Fails, and we get the same result. Carl Lucas is now super strong, bulletproof, everything. You know the drill from here. So yeah, I really did enjoy seeing Luke Cage's origin in this adaptation. So after he breaks out of prison, he meets back up with Reva, and then we get to the events of Jessica Jones. As we know, Jessica Jones killed Reva. And then after the events of Jessica Jones, a few months later, we get to Luke Cage sweeping up hair and polishing windows at Pop's barbershop. So Luke Cage is working at Pop's barbershop, and after Chico, one of the barbers, and his friend, one of the other neighborhood regular kids, get into some trouble by stealing from Cottonmouth, they get into a lot of trouble. One ends up dead, and Chico desperately looks for help from Pop. Now, Pop, he knows about Luke Cage. He's known for a long time about his powers and abilities, but he also knows Luke Cage wants to lay low and stay out of trouble. Well, under the circumstances, Pops is looking for Luke Cage to help Chico, help settle things with Cottonmouth, but he's very reluctant to get involved. Well, when Cottonmouth's main guy finds out where Chico's hiding at the barbershop, they decide to pay the barbershop a visit, and he sprays the whole barbershop with twin Uzis or Tech 9s or whatever he had, and he ends up killing Pop in the process. Now, it was really sad to see Pop go. Like I said, that actor did a really good job, and I really did enjoy the character. But it is the event that really pushes Luke Cage into hero mode and becoming, what he's been running from this whole time. Early on in the season, we get an Easter egg for the Avengers, as they refer to the incident from the first movie, the first Avengers movie, when the Chitauri attacked Earth. They now call it The Incident, and there's bootleg footage of it, and there's a guy selling them. He references Tony Stark, Captain America, Thor, and Hulk while he's trying to sell his raw footage. So that was a pretty cool Easter egg in my opinion. People are speculating that the Marvel Netflix series and the MCU, the Marvel movie, are trying to distance themselves more and more. But seeing big Easter eggs like that always makes me feel good. I love the idea of this whole universe being connected. I understand that the tones of the shows and the movies are pretty different, but I just love this big Marvel universe, and I like thinking that it's all interconnected. So for the rest of the season, we see Luke Cage trying to take down Cottonmouth and his whole organization. And another Easter egg, Cottonmouth's main arms supplier is HammerTech, or weapons made by HammerTech, which is obviously a reference to Iron Man 2 with Justin Hammer. That's a pretty deep cut as far as movies go, so I thought that was pretty cool. So Luke Cage and Cottonmouth are going at it for the first half of the season, but we get to episode 7 where we see the backstory of Cottonmouth and a little bit of Mariah Dillard, his cousin, in this, and we see them being raised by Mama Mabel and how hard she was and how she really pushed Cornell Stokes into being the man he is today, or was before he was killed. But as we see, he really wasn't into this life at all. He was on his way to being a very talented musician who wanted to go that way, take that road, but Mama Mabel, she wouldn't let him. She forced him into their life, the family. Then she makes him murder his own uncle face to face, point blank range, at the age of 14. And you wonder why this guy is so messed up. Then we see Mariah, his own cousin, murder him in cold blood in a very brutal way, out of rage. And after she killed her own cousin, we really start to see the transformation of Mariah Dillard into Black Mariah, as she's known in the comics and even referenced in the show early on. She actually looks quite different from her comic book counterpart. And we really see how Shades plays a role in pushing her down that path. Shades, Theo Rossi, I thought he did a good job in this. I really enjoyed Shades as quite the X factor, and I can't wait to see how he comes into play down the road in future seasons. Okay, so let's move on to the introduction of Diamondback on the show. He's chasing Luke Cage around, and he finally shoots him with one of those Judas bullets. And it really takes a toll on Luke Cage. And this is where I said I thought it got kind of slow to me. So an episode ends with Luke Cage getting shot. The next episode, he's pretty much on the run from Diamondback the whole time. And then at the end of that episode, he gets shot again. And then the next episode, it's a little bit more of the same, and finally we get him fixed. I just thought that was a little too long and really could have been cut down. And then in the last episode, we get the final fight between Diamondback and Luke Cage. And we see that Diamondback has acquired a new special suit from HammerTech. One that can reflect bullets and apparently has some kind of generator or something like that on his back that makes him super strong. The outfit design, everybody's really going to have their own opinion on this one. They did make it look pretty similar to the comic book outfit, but, it almost doesn't work, but it doesn't really bother me too much. to be honest with you. But the fight itself, while it actually is kind of a good fight, it does go on a lot longer than probably realistic. At any given time, Luke Cage could just take off Diamondback's helmet or rip off the generator on his back. It really shouldn't last that long, but it plays into the narrative, and it is what it is. Also, kind of another Easter egg, we see Misty Knight get shot in the arm. At some point, you think it might get amputated, which would be right on with the comics, where she does have a bionic arm. But that didn't happen. Maybe next time, next season, or something like that. We actually do get a couple references to Jessica Jones in this, from Pops to Luke Cage talking about when she shot him with the shotgun, and from Mariah Dillard, who's speaking to the public against, these superhumans or superpower people running around taking matters into their own hands. We get a couple references to Daredevil through Rosario Dawson's character, when she tells Luke Cage she knows a good lawyer that could really help him out. We all know she's talking about Matt Murdock. You may have recognized Turk Barrett from Daredevil in this, plays small, an entertaining and humorous role if you ask me. There's an episode that opens up where you can hear the broadcast of Trish Talk, the radio show of Trish Walker, you may know from Jessica Jones. With music being such a big part of this show, there's actually a pretty cool cameo from Method Man, who happens to be in a party store as it gets robbed, and then Luke Cage comes in to save the day and meets Method Man. Method Man then goes on to the Sway radio show where he talks about Luke Cage and even drops a verse about him, which I thought was pretty cool, being a pretty big fan of hip-hop. Not to mention, every episode in this season is actually named after a Gangstar song. There's actually a few characters from the other Marvel Netflix shows that either get referenced or have cameos in this. Also, since this is based on a comic book property, you can pretty much bet that most of the characters in this show you can find in the comics as well. That's most of the Easter eggs I can think of. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. If you know of any or know any I left out, please let me know in the comments below. So we see this show end with Luke Cage going to jail. He let himself be arrested for the charges that are up against him. And apparently we'll see where that picks up. Probably in the Defenders, not season 2 of Luke Cage. But until then, I can't wait. I can't wait to see Iron Fist. I can't wait to see the Defenders, Luke Cage season 2. All that's coming up. So yeah, I really did enjoy, and I really recommend the first season of Luke Cage. If you've seen it, please let me know what you thought in the comments below. This is AnTalk, the weekly comic conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you later.